Welcome to the Grey Eye and Disability Arts online podcast, Disability and, bringing together thoughtful discussion and debate. This month, Colin Hambrook chats with actor and producer Mat Fraser about Crip Tales, a series of 6 disability-led monologues curated by Matt and recently broadcast on the BBC. This podcast contains strong language.
So, Mat Fraser, lovely to see you again after all this time. And Crip Tales is a real watershed moment, I think, in British television. And very exciting to see so much press coverage as well. 23 mentions in national press. That's got to be first, doesn't it?
Yeah. By the way, lovely to be here, Colin, talking to you again. I would agree with you there was a watershed on it, but I don't think it was all Crip Tales doing. I think Crip Tales hold their own. They're good quality dramas, you know, surprise, surprise. You, me, and all the Disability Arts Online audience. We all know this shit anyway, right? But you know, when you do allow a disabled person to write a thing and you let the disabled actor do it, and then you get nice, what we might call BBC high quality drama treatment on it. It looks really good because people expect stuff to do with disability to be awkward and embarrassing and maybe a bit shit because the people who ham-fisted our treatment beforehand didn't know what they were talking about. So people come with these lower expectations, and then into that you put COVID and the reaction from the performing industry, which is to reinvent the monologue through Zoom as a viable form of entertainment. Well, we've all got used to sort of slightly low quality recorded single person dramas that are clipped together, like David Tennant and Thingy did that pretending to rehearse for the National thing. And that's as good as they could get it. But then our thing came along, having been filmed beforehand in, like, i.e. inverted commas, proper telly studios. And of course, it seemed like fantastically lush and lavish and high quality. Plus, it was all the good stuff, you know, the authenticity. So I think some of the reasons we got those 23 press mentions, Colin, are because of circumstance due to the times we find ourselves in, plus the awesomeness that is Crip Tales. Because I'm not going to take any steam away from them. They were brilliant. And I was the lucky guy who got to curate them, you know. It could have been you, Colin. And I know the results would have been very similar. Different, of course, but the same high quality. You know, you and me have been around the block a bit. We're longish in the tooth.
We are.
We know what's what, and we know what's shit, and we don't want to let that happen again. So all that was playing on me a bit.
How did the whole Crip Tales thing come about?
Okay, well, it came from a legacy, which was Mark Gatiss originally did a thing called Queers, which is a series of gay men's monologues set in a gay pub. BBC loved it. It went really well. Somebody obviously thought, what about women? So the following year, Vicky Featherston, the artistic director at the Royal Court Studio, got to do Snatches, which was an anthology of female stories. They asked her because at the Royal Court there's a lot of new, good women writers. And it does all come from the writing, Colin, I do think. And so they got some fantastic writing. And they managed to get Jodie Comer, you know, Villanelle from Killing Eve, to be in one of them. The one, Bovril Pam, that's the one I would recommend to anyone to watch if they wanted to see some of Snatches. So the woman that produced that successfully was called Debbie Christie. She works for ITV Studios. And she approached me and said, if I can get the green light on the commission, will you curate a series of 6 monologues to do with disability? I was like, yeah, sure. Thinking, well, that's never going to happen, is it? You know, sure, love, give us a ring when, sure, give us a ring when, they get to the next level. A year goes by, I get a call. She's like, we got green lit. I'm like, you what? I couldn't believe it. But then, of course, I was like, gulp. And then she helped me. I knew loads of people, but I also know that I'm in my 50s and there's a lot of people I don't know anymore, you know? And I went to Grey Eye Writers Database, the BBC Writers Room Disability Database, other databases, looking for new voices. and we pitched for writers, and writers pitched, and we got a short list, and it was very difficult because there were some great writers that I wanted to employ, but I couldn't. I just want to give a big shout out to Rosaline McDonough, who's a viciously good writer with a disabled traveller woman point of view voice. Who else has got that? No one. Her pieces are extraordinary. Anyway, she didn't make the grade because ultimately I felt because it was so niche, the audience wouldn't get what she was doing, and it was going to America. And we went with Jackie Hagan instead. And in retrospect, I'm very glad of that, because Jackie's working class Scouser, disabled, estate living northern voice is something that the BBC needed up in big style. But just as a coda to that, Rosalind just got commissioned by the Abbey Theatre in Dublin to write a play. But I'm so thrilled about that. Anyway, so we got the writers. Then we were like, oh no, we've only got 6. What are we going to do? Do one deaf, one blind, one wheelchair? You can't do that. That's a rubbish way of going around it. So I just said to all the writers, look, it's got to be within the last 50 years. It's got something to do with disability. If possible, the story will pivot on something to do with disability. Don't make it safe. Don't give me something boring that people are expecting to see. Otherwise, do your worst. And I was stunned with what they came back at. And most of them went, and I want this actor to do it. And of course, being the nature of disabled actors is they were all available. Even Liz Carr and Ruth Madeley were available, which is a crime. But anyway, and so we got the tip of the crop, you know. And we only auditioned one, which was Carly Houston, auditioned and got Matilda Ibini's The Shed. It was for a black woman wheelchair user. And do you know how hard it was for me, a 50-year-old white guy, who really wants to do his best, to find 10 black wheelchair-using actors, women actors? That alone shocked me and made me realise, boy, you know, we've got some work to do here. However, as with always with auditions, the best prepared actor got the job. Carly Houston also the camera loves her. And, you know, I know that sounds cheap and nasty, but when you're making telly, these things do count. You know, I'm not talking about pretty or conventional notions of cosmopolitan ideal, nothing like that. I'm just talking about sometimes a camera loves your face and sometimes they don't. It's just the way it is. So that's how we ended up doing that. And then all the team, the production, all of that stuff was basically between the directors, which was Ewan Marshall, Amit, and Amit from Grey Eye, and Jenny Seeley from Grey Eye. Originally, I guess they were all from Grey Eye originally. And between them and production, which was Debbie Christie, they got the crew and team together. And then finally, long answer, but this is how it got together. Debbie said, they're all able-bodied. You've got to do the talk on the beginning of day one. And I was like, oh God, okay. And I found myself saying, you know, I had a prepared sheet, but I just threw it away. And I just said, guys, I know all the disabled people involved on a personal level. So I could talk generically, but I'm just going to talk how I know I can talk because it's quicker. None of these guys are going to be offended if you ask a stupid question. Please ask stupid questions. If you don't, the number one thing you mustn't do is second guess and then panic about what you've decided is going to happen. Just ask. It will all be fine. We'll all get on like a house on fire. And that's exactly what happened. It was fine, you know?
It's always that fear of disability that gets in the way. You know, it was great to see so many of the press. I think Susie Fay and Brian Donaldson, you know, saying, why hasn't this happened before? You know, that we've got disabled directors, writers and actors. And it you know, it still feels like we're still trying to get on the bus in some ways.
We are. And then the other thing that happened during COVID, I don't know whether you noticed, but off the back of Black Lives Matter, which on the trajectory I'm talking about came off the back of Oscars So White, which came off the back of Me Too movement. You know, there was definitely like an awareness. You know, the young people have got political again, ain't they? You know, it's good. Oh, thank God, finally. So, of course, what happened was somebody went, oh, fuck, disability is a diversity. What? It's a diversity? well, we must apply all these diverse things to it. And suddenly we got upgraded. Did you notice? It was really weird. We always knew that, of course, but suddenly the mainstream decided that we had to be included in the lists. And then Living Crip Tales came out just at that time. So I really did benefit from the cultural zeitgeist, that the shift in perception around disability that's been happening. You know, Crip Tales really benefited from that. And the other thing I wanted to say was, yes, the journalists are all so much more on message now. You know, the one illustration I have is that I got asked in America, because they went out in America first, to do an interview with something really scary for this old fella called Pop Sugar. Yeah, it's like a gossip website. I was like, oh, God, okay, I'll do that. I was really scared. This lovely young mixed race gay man opened the Zoom call. He went, first of all, let me say, I've just watched all 6 of them, back to back, took notes, and I'm stunned. That was a bloody change, because normally they just skim through it, don't they? And then he looks at me really seriously, goes, do you know what? I don't think I've ever seen a black disabled woman in a wheelchair express love for another woman on television. I don't think that's ever happened before. And I was like, yeah, thinking, okay, no, I wasn't expecting that for the first question. Yeah, wow. And then I was thought, yeah, these guys are really clued in now. We don't have to do all the explaining anymore. Or actually, and say, sorry, it's not handicapped, it's disabled. You know, we don't have to do that anymore.
No. The one thing that I did notice was there 2 of the reviews in the Times, Jack Melvin and Carol Midgley, both felt compelled to give the Latin names for impairments yet again, which was the one disappointment, I think. You know, apart from that, the critique of the format and some of the direction, it was all really constructive criticism.
Absolutely, yeah, and very fair. I mean, we have to be criticised just with everybody else, don't we? You know. I agree with you. It's definitely a watershed moment. We are upon a watershed moment right now as we speak. You know, the things that we've been banging on about for 30 years are about to happen. Not how we imagined it, of course, but those things are going to happen. When I was young and even more full of ego, I did imagine how my Oscar acceptance speech would go as a naive 29-year-old. I'm 58 now, and I know I'm never going to do it. But I think Ruth Madeley might.
Ruth Madeley, yeah. And Jackie Hagan so impressed me. I'm kind of almost reticent to talk about it, but of course, you know, the one really sad criticism of Crip Tales was what happened with the Disability News Service, and why does the disability movement always feel compelled to make a campaign out of, you know, angry of Twitter sort of campaign out of rather than engaging in a much more honest and direct way with
first
people.
off, I do regret the way I've initially reacted to John. It was a bit of knee-jerk. He's quite an aggressive, the way he puts things is provocative, because he's a journalist and he wants, you know, action. I understand that. But when I explained what I thought, which was that the piece, The Real Deal by Tom Wentworth, is a savage indictment of how ridiculous the benefit system has got, whereby performing a cliched version of disability is more likely to get you your rights than actually being genuinely eligible. And he came back at me with an even longer email, which really just said roughly the same thing. So I said, you know what? We shall have to agree to differ, John. Because I just didn't want to talk about it anymore with him, because I could see I wasn't going to change his mind and he wasn't going to change mine. However, and it was a to and fro. You know, he did turn it into a bit of campaign. He did always CC Liz Carr and Tom and you and the producer and Debbie, the executive producer at the BBC, you know, in a kind of stirring the furor kind of way. I know that in his heart, his intentions are good. As I hope he knows mine are. And if I will say one thing, I defend totally Tom Wentworth's script. That's the kind of writer Tom is. You get cheeky little rights and wrongs in his stuff, and that's so delicious, and that's why I love his stuff.
Yeah.
But next time, if I was ever going to do a story or be involved with a story where there was a benefits, is he or isn't he? Are they or aren't they? I might look a little deeper into that and flesh that character out a little bit better. I might, but Tom needn't, because what's so sad is the original version of that, which was 3 pages longer, as original versions are wont to be, was perfectly explained the situation. It was a whole thing, savage on the DWP. Like, it really stated its case. But unfortunately, it was the least dramatically successful part of the monologue. And so it got cut. And out with the water, a little bit of the baby got chucked out as well, so to speak, with the bathwater there.
I still thought it really came across as a critique of the Kafkaesque nature of the PIP system, and just the heinous fact that the DWP have got this page up on their up on their website saying, shop your neighbor, shop them now. I know. We would be, if the Russians did the same thing, we would be down on them like a ton of bricks for human rights issues. And yet in this country, it's perfectly acceptable. And that's that same realization just doesn't occur to the British public.
I mean, I've spoken to older black people about this who are in the business, in the arts. And they say, we all recognise it, those of us that are political, which is that if you're never represented and then suddenly you are represented, you want the representation to be like you want it to be. Because, you finally, there you are being represented, but it's not what you want. And you get angry. And then you, instead of having to go at the system that stopped any other representation happening for the last 20 years, you stab the person who did it. I mean, white, straight, able-bodied, heterosexual, middle-class men have had so many versions of them shown to us in literature that we, as a nation, will take any representation of that because we've got all the other ones to counter it with. But when you haven't got anything else to counter it with, I can appreciate that if it's not how you see it and how you passionately, politically think it should be, it can get a bee in your bonnet.
Yeah.
However, I wish they'd seen our point a bit better. I really do. You articulated it the best.
I could see how it hit a nerve for a lot of disabled people who
taught me a lesson.
Who are in that position, and I kind of thought that there should have been the BBC should have done what they do with serious critical issues and give give out a warning at the beginning and also a list of places that you can go to for support if you're affected by the issues.
You're completely right, Colin. That's exactly what should have happened. That it might actually have tipped the balance the other way, I think. I cannot, I have to, and I was the curator, I got paid. I am responsible for some of that, and I regret it, and I do apologise for that aspect. But I do not apologise for Tom's script, which I still think is really good.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I thought the breadth of the monologues as well was just absolutely breathtaking. Going back to the reviews. I mean, there was some. I think the only one that was a bit kind of groany was in The Guardian, Ewan Ferguson, where he said Crip Tales was a space to remind viewers, again, sigh, that a person in a wheelchair does not have to be addressed in hush puppy tones. I think that was the only one that I thought, but even he got the real deal, and the way it exposes the Kafkaesque nature of the PIP assessment system. That was the one sort of unfair bit. I mean, they were all 4 or 5 star.
And no, the pull quotes list, mate, is nuts. I've got, for my first bit of writing on TV, I've got, witty, furious, heartfelt, not a word is wasted, deliciously nuanced. I've got all these things I could, if I wanted, to put at the bottom of my little email signature. Not that I'm going to. Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased as punch with the attention it got, but more of the knock on and the doors that it has opened, which really has surprised me, Colin. Suffice to say, in a year's time, there's going to be a lot of disability stuff on television. And actually, some of it's going to be really good because I've just read some of it. I mean, oh my God. Have you read any of Annalisa Dinella's work? Do you know her?
I don't. No.
She's a visually impaired writer, late 30s, mid 30s, who come out of the BBC Writers' Room programme, writes about visual impairment. I just read a pilot for a thing and I cried 5 times, 5 separate times. She's such a good writer. And this is mainstream stuff now. You know, these are mainstream people grooming her to do a television series. You know, it's a very exciting time, Colin. The writing's great.
Can you say more about what's coming next? As
what I can say is that Ewan Marshall, who was the director of 3 of the monologues, and the lovely Jack Thorne, most famous disabled writer in the world, have got together and knocked up a pitch for a series of half hours. Because I felt that the industry don't still quite trust disabled writers enough to commission them to do series, but they're good enough and they're experienced enough. A monologue isn't going to give them people they trust. Ditto a duologue isn't, which might be the natural next step to a monologue. After all drama basically is interaction between people. So one would think that, 2 people talking, great, drama. Well, actually, yeah, but it's not going to convince the TV commissioners that the writer can do a full drama. They're still going to go, I don't know, you see. And so I just said to Ewan and Jack, let's just pitch for half hours, straight off. They both immediately agreed. Jack just suggested another frame we put on it. It's getting to the point where I can't really divulge too many details. Suffice to say, to our surprise, when we sent this pitch out, several people responded very positively. And one company, a very well-known drama producing company, at the commercial end of television, immediately just came on board. No caveats. Just said, yeah, we want to do it. Let's make this happen. So we're back at the looking for writers stage. There are specific writers we're looking for. We feel that whilst talent is the most important thing, at this point, experience is going to start counting for stuff. It's not like we can mentor or co-write with the writers. They've really got to be able to hold their own. And so we just literally, I'm telling you this as it's happening, farming out certain people a sort of basic writer brief for pitches to come in by the end of Jan. So I've got no guarantee this is going to work, but you know what? Because of the phone calls and the people have gone, what are you doing? I know, I'm interested in that. Will you tell us all about that? I put on the posh voice when I say that to denote how high up a floor it is in the building. But I'm like, oh, okay. Suddenly we're the hot thing. Suddenly it's all changed. And they want it up them.
Great. So to quote your monologue, you say 50 father could be disabled.
Yeah, you might start seeing that, yeah.
We might start seeing that. I mean, I thought it was, interesting that a couple of the press quotes kind of pulled that quote out.
Yeah, I found that was interesting too. It wasn't, you never know what they're going to pull out. But that one, I suppose, is a little poignant, that line, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. And how was it? Because I kind of recognised so much of what you were talking about in audition, in the interviews that you did with Alan Sutherland.
Yes, of course.
How was it kind of performing your own story?
It's weird when you're an actor-writer, because when you're a writer, you're writing. You don't think, oh, I'll look great doing that bit. I'll write a little bit more of that bit. You just don't serve the actor's ego when you're writing. You just write the good writing. And then when I approached it as an actor, I actually needed a director to tell me how to do it. I mean, I thought I knew how to do it, but because I'd written it, there was no real interrogation of how I was going to do it, because I made some assumptions because I'd written it. So of course I knew best. But that wasn't the case, because directors are always worth their weight in gold. And Ewan, who's a director I trust very much, hauled me over a few coals, as he should have, made me look at things in a different way. A little bit of rewriting then happened, and we proceeded and got to a point where I was able to really give it my full performance. But he discussed how he wanted to do the front on wide shot, the close-ups, the asides. That's the friend you're talking to. That's this so-called audience. Over there is when it's the director or something. And, we because I had many different people I was talking to, and I don't do big announcement segues. I just suddenly am talking to the other person. And so he felt that would make it easier for people to, get hold of and stuff. So yeah. And Jackie Hagan, it's a shame you can't ask her the same question, because she writes for herself as well. What I loved about her performance was that it was an actor's performance. What Jackie did, though, and, again, Ewan directed her, and they really bonded, in part because they're both amputees, but actually more personality-wise. I think there's just him being an amputee meant she could relax and not think he was a tosser, was that he eked out a proper acting performance from her, because she's a really good actor. That shit was deep.
Yes,
and it wasn't it wasn't that kind of breeze over it performance poetry performed on stage to a crowd style. It was very intimate and here in the frame. I was so impressed with her. I personally have great hopes for her. I think I know for a fact a lot of the television people were very excited by her, the new voice and all that. I really think she's an important voice. Working class woman who's rejected notions of the cosmos stuff, very articulate, and a constant relationship with pain-killing drugs that are also affect mood infectors. I mean, she's such a complicated entity, that one. I could sit and watch Jackie for forever.
Yeah, me too. And she's got a great knack of just coming out with stuff that you would just never expect. I think she had probably through the whole kind of Crip Tales series, she probably had some of the best lines.
Oh man, some of the lines she's got. The one that always sticks with me is, like those 12-year-old boys who are holding their end of their sleeves in case their feelings fall out. Who says that? I mean, what a phrase. I just love her. I love her.
Drugs are only good if you get not to be on them sometimes.
Yes. God, yes.
I mean, I'd sort of going back to again another line from your monologue, that it seems that being disabled and difficult is par for the course. I mean, we want to see more disabled baddies, don't we?
Oh, God, yes.
But disabled baddies that don't kind of fit that kind of stereotypical kind of Shakespearean framework of what a disabled baddie is like.
Yeah, I mean, I have two examples of playing disabled baddies. One was Richard III. And, as an actor, you finally get there. Because you don't just land a Richard III. You have to do some work to get one of them, And you're like, I'm here. I'm finally playing the most famous disabled fictional character in the world. I, Mat Fraser, am playing Richard III in Hull. This is amazing. And then they're like, but it's not really, is it? Because Shakespeare didn't really know what he was fucking talking about. Here I am again, stuck in another able-bodied bloke's vision of what disability is. And ultimately, I mean, I loved saying the lines, "Behold mine arm, it is the work of the devil," or whatever. It was super fun to do that. But ultimately, it was like, this is just like any other non-disabled bloke's version of stuff. And then the other baddie I got to play was Jim, the murderer of a silent witness, who was a nasty fella who went around suicide chat rooms going, "Go on, do it." Like encouraging people.
Yes.
And
I thought that was quite brave of Silent Witness to
bloody hell.
Write that role.
Series 23 went nuts. It was me, there was Gary Robson. It was a Crip fest. Talking about work. It was great. But yeah, They did somewhat slash my part a bit. The original script had a lot more scenes, but it was enough. What was great about it was being able to act a baddie. It's so much more enjoyable than being able to act the good person. It's so much more dramatic. And it really suited me because anyone could encourage someone to commit suicide. It wasn't like I had to wield a murder weapon that reactionary from Bristol would say, there was no way that man could have held that thing. You know, no one could argue about any of them things. So we were just left with the evil intent. And I was happy. Julia Ford, the director, was happy with what I did. It was the best, in many ways, it's the most fun I've had playing a role. And I would love to play a baddie. I really, really would. And, we'd say about but not for all the old reasons, as in I'm evil because I'm disabled, etc. Or the apparently more sophisticated one. I'm evil because I understand the social model of disability and I'm projecting that I'm only angry because of the way society has treated me. But when we get down to it at the end of the film, I will bring out all the deformity shit again. That's the next level that we're experiencing. I'm like, no, please let a disabled person write a disabled baddie. I think it will be really good. I would love to play a James Bond villain because, and that's another thing I just want to quickly get into. Some cliches of disability are okay, I think. It's just they've always done them the wrong way. So James Bond loves to have its in-house lines. That never happened to the other fella, and so on and so forth. Where they just basically turn to the camera and go, "Yeah, this is a James Bond film." When I'd be like, he'd look at me. Oh, it's you, And it's very traditional to be a disabled James Bond villain. Not traditional to be a real one, but all James Bond villains have a disability of some sort, don't they? Most of them. Yeah. They're the old guy. They're still like Le Chiffre, bleeding from his evil disabled eye. Yes. In Casino Royale. That was pretty special. So I would to do that, but that's the little devil in me that likes to flip the cliches. What I'm saying here is about the cliche. So I'm thinking about a father that a middle-aged man has got nothing to live for. I don't know why. And suddenly we'd see a 5-year-old girl. I don't know what, she's a refugee. She's been dumped out the back of a truck by the nasty people traffickers. There's a 5-year-old girl. And she needs help, and he's there, and he sees the girl, and he helps the girl, and she needs to get back to her mum in Syria. And that's the story. He has no idea how to get to Syria. He has no money, and he needs to start eliciting the help of people. Some people don't want to help. They want to fuck him up. Some people want to help. It's a highly dramatic story. He gets to Syria, and it's like way out of his league, real Syria. He's like, what was I thinking that I could help? We get into a whole other load of shit. That's the story. Now, make the man disabled. How much better does the story immediately become? And the reason is because there's jeopardy and worry and fear about the father managing to do the task, right? If you add impairment to that, it adds a delicious sort of added dongle or module. And it's not saying, oh, he won't be able to do it because the pluckiness of his will is what the film's about. But if you add disability, people go, of course, he's disabled. They've always had to fight. Some bloke from Bristol, although now he's got an East End accent, would be like, oh, yeah, I can see that. Do you know what I mean? And program makers are plot makers and drama makers are missing out on flipping the cliche. I hereby say it's okay to use some of the cliches. You just got to use them in the clever way. Because you're not demeaning the man's right to full humanship by making him disabled. Good God, he's trying to get a little waif back to Syria. What's more fully human than that?
Barriers make for drama.
Don't they? And disability can be a barrier sometimes to things. So I think there's room for a lot more sophisticated, subtle writing coming forward, and it's going to come. But yeah, I would love to play a baddie, but I'm getting on a bit now, Colin. And the sort of roles I will get are the more character roles, the father, the doctor, the lawyer or whatever, rather than the lead. I'm fine with that. Actually, it's nicer.
What's next for you, Matt?
Well, what's next for me for the next couple of months is pushing this pitch to commission. So pitching for the next level Crip Tales vibe, basically. Also waiting for acting work. Here's another thing that's happened, Colin. I hesitate to say this because I am aware there's a vast army of unemployed disabled actors who loathe me. because in their mind, I get all the work. Of course, if you could see it from my perspective, it's not like that. But I appreciate it might be for them. But I just got offered 3 lines in something in a Channel 4 drama. And I told them to fuck off. I said, no, you don't get to hang your diversity hat on the smallest of hooks like that. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. You could do that to some ingenue who just come out of drama school, but you can't do it to me. And you shouldn't be doing it to any disabled actors. What's great is that my new agent was the one that said all that and then reported back to me. So, oh, yeah, we told them off a strip. I said, did you? Oh, yeah, we told them. What the hell do they think they're doing? It's outrageous. You can't go around doing that. They've got to treat disabled actors properly. I was like, wow, I love my new agent. But then I got offered a 6-parter of the naff cop in a bunch of cops, the untalented dickhead one who does magic tricks because he knows nobody likes him and he's stupid. And I thought deeply about this and I thought, do I want to play that role? No. And this might be just my ego talking, but I feel I feel I'm due for slightly edgier roles than that. Cooler people, nasty people, sure, I don't mind playing a fucker, but I just didn't feel that this unpopular, uncharismatic, unsuccessful, unsocial waste of space should be played by a disabled person at all. Because what the able-bodied writers and casters who are magnanimously trying to be open casting about it haven't realised is that if you put a disabled person in a role like that, people equate the disability with being a loser. And that we can't have that. So I found myself turning that down as well, with real hesitancy, because it was a Netflix show and it would have meant I would have got my SAG points, which meant I would have got healthcare in America, which I've just lost. And so I kind of feel bad about that. But I know I asked a couple of other disabled people who I trust, and they corroborated my opinion. So I went with it and gulped and said, no, thank you. I am hoping to get a bit of acting work though, Colin. I would love some acting work.
I loved American Horror Story.
Me too. And I still get like a £10 check once every 6 months for that. I can't believe it's going on so long.
I bought a subscription to Netflix when I
Hey.
But I heard you were going to be on that.
Oh, thank you. I was disappointed not to be in subsequent series of it, but then so many other actors weren't either. And now I think it's kind of lost its way a bit as an anthology series. But yeah, that was exponentially the biggest thing in my life because suddenly American people knew who I was. And I still get stopped on the street all the time by people because I'm so easy to recognize. And so I get a lot of shout outs from younger kids, which is nice in America. Yeah, I'll get something, Colin. I know I will. I'm not worried. I'll pick up some acting work. But I must admit right now, I'm kind of like, oh, is this why I'm here then? Was actually Crip Tales the way I'm going? Sometimes you have to take a nod from God or whatever you believe in. For me, it's not God. I'm an atheist, but sometimes you have to look at the signs that are being sent to you. And maybe the signs are, no, Matt, you're not going to be just a lovely actor who picks up lovely work from time to time, swans into the awards and leaves again. You're going to be the guy that gets the project going, that gets the disabled people the work. You know, and if that's what it seems to be right now, and hurrah for that, because I am an activist, you know, and it is probably the only way I can serve my deep activism is by getting other disabled people jobs in telly and film, you know.
And you mentioned that you're writing.
Writing. I've had so many bloody ideas. I'm writing a deep history one. I'm writing a difficult transitionary tale set in 1977 in Florida and California. That's a bugger to write, so I've left that for a bit. I'm writing an 1850 street beggars and whores play set in a fake cripple begging pub called The Hospital that actually existed in New York, where able-bodied people would pretend to be disabled to elicit charity from people. And then the ugly laws came along, which was a little-known group of laws which basically prevented you from begging based on how unsightly you were.
Whoa. When the hell was that?
Yeah, this is like hidden history. So they were for about 30 years, only in 5 states, and it incremented. So it started in Chicago, then it went to San Francisco, then New Orleans, and finally ended up in New York, where it was refined. But each time, and like, for example, for some reason, inexplicably, in New Orleans, they were particularly bothered by deformed people. Whereas in Chicago, it was the war wounded they didn't want to see. Anyway, it literally had us swept off the streets. The last fiscal independent outlet for a disabled person is begging. And that was taken away from them as well. And it was, of course, they were all bunged into Christian homes for the charitable, i.e. institutions and workhouses. That was the beginning of proper American institutionalization in the Victorian era, like it was over here.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There's this period of history in the Lower East Side, where I live. I look around and I look at the building and think, that is actually the building where that thing happened, And I really want to write this, because I found about this incredible woman called Mary Largo, who was a whore, a prostitute, who ran a gang of fake crippled beggars. Unheard of for a woman to run any gang in those days, let alone a gang of men. And I just thought, what would it be like if a real disabled person turned up in their fold? And what would it be like if they had a relationship with one of these people? Then all my juices started flowing, and I'm like, oh, there's a play in this. So I'm writing that as well. But because this telly stuff has just landed in my lap, I've cleared the decks. I'm just concentrating on this for the next 2 months, because if I can help this get to commission, that will be a bloody watershed. Because what I'm hoping is that this is the reason I want Ruth to get the award. The reason I want the writers to get the writing is because I want them to stop playing us. I want them to stop writing shit about us, like Come As You Are. We all want that to stop, don't we?
Absolutely.
We all want it to stop. And I honestly think that once the first heralded, awarded disabled actor stands there or sits there and goes, hey, see, it's not so bad when we do it ourselves, right? Could I ask one small favour? Could you all stop doing it if you're not disabled? That would be so nice.
I would.
If Ruth did that from the Oscars stage, no one would ever play a cripple again. I'm saying cripple, I'm using it as a sort of in-house disability affectionate. I'm sorry, I'll stop using it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Maybe I'm being naive, like I was when I was 28. But I honestly think that we're almost at the precipice of killing this shit stone dead. And if that's the only thing I'm going to see in my acting career in my life, then I bloody well want to see it, because I can't take it anymore. And I was guilty. I was saying about those 3 non-white actors who played the 3 disabled people in Come As You Are. I was guilty of thinking, guys, you should have known better. As non-white people, you know what the argument is, and yet you still did it. But I don't have a right as a white person to say that. But I found myself thinking it, a bit ashamed of it. But that's what anger does to a person, isn't it? Makes you have shameful thoughts.
Big thank you to Mat Fraser for your openness and frankness there in talking to us about Crip Tales and disability representation on the screen. Lovely to talk to you as always, and we really do hope that this is the beginning of something new in terms of disability representation.
Visit greyeye.org and disabilityarts.online for details of productions, events, interviews, opinions, reviews, and learning opportunities.